Mine is a tribute of sorts to the late Bruce Lee, the kung fu star who died suddenly at the height of his fame. And the movie's called Kung Fu Master. It's being advertised as being shot in Bruce Lee style, but then what kung fu movie isn't advertised as being shot in Bruce Lee style? Bruce Lee has become in death a brand name like Walt Disney or General Motors or Betty Crocker. And so we get movies Bruce Lee style starring Bruce Lee's double and Bruce Lee's cousin and Bruce Lee's nephew and Bruce Lee's ghost. And not long ago there was even a movie starring somebody named Bronson Lee who was supposed to be half Charles Bronson and half, you guessed it, Gene, where will it all end?
Not with my film. I think we ought to call this segment Pekingese of the Week, because my dog is also a Bruce Lee ripoff called Last Fist of Fury, starring Bruce Lee. That's Lee spelled L-I. Now, why should we spend all this time, week after week, knocking inferior kung fu films? Because the people who go to see these movies are truly among the most loyal of filmgoers, and they are getting mightily ripped off. In Last Fist of Fury, Bruce L.I. tries to recover a magical pearl before an evil wizard and some American thugs get it. The thugs include a black man whose first line of dialogue goes like this: "And I knows they keep that snake pearl hidden there." Well, you should have heard the black members of the audience howl at that line. This is truly an insulting film.
Sounds like a dog for the ages.
Yes.
So much for the celluloid canines.
My dog this week is a shoddy thriller called Nightmare. A bunch of California college kids off to Mexico on a lark bump into some high-powered drug dealers led by Ray Milland and Peter Graves. The drug dealers' henchmen are portrayed in racist images as slobbering, greasy Mexican, and in short order, they shoot one of the college boys and rape his girlfriend. The rape is reenacted in slow-motion replay. This is a cruel little thriller that moves at a snail's pace. I knew I was in trouble when the kids in the film sang an entire song around a campfire, and then one of the Mexicans sings another entire song and repeats the chorus 3 times. That's known as padding a movie. Awful.
My dog this week is called Bloody Friday, and it's a very badly dubbed imported film from West Germany about a gang that holds up a bank and takes the customers hostage. Judging by the cars in this film, I'd say Bloody Friday is about 10 years old, and it certainly hasn't aged well. Bloody Friday is a rehash of tired old bank robbery cliches, the screaming hostages, the frantic gang leader, the competent cops. Also badly dubbed, they sound as if they're phoning in their dialogue from the bottom of a well. I found Bloody Friday way down at the bottom third of a triple bill of El Cheapo Sleazo exploitation garbage. And the point I'd like to make is, anytime you can see 3 movies on the same bill in the same movie theater, especially at a so-called bargain price, the odds are almost overwhelming that none of...
My dog this week is a reprehensible little shocker called Don't Answer the Phone. I know we usually make a lot of jokes in this segment of the show, but Don't Answer the Phone isn't the least bit laughable. It's a cheap thriller about a crazed rapist attacking a series of women, and that's all there really is to the film. A religious crazed nut who has an inferiority complex regarding his father simply attacks one woman after another. This film practically slobbers over its rape attacks. What's it trying to do? Turn on the sickies in the audience? Don't Answer the Phone is really just part of the message of this picture. Don't see this movie is more to the point. Not a good one, Roger.
Sounds really reprehensible,
Yeah.
Gene. Mine is merely bad. My dog this week is sort of distinguished, though. It's absolutely and without any question the worst vampire movie I've ever seen. It's called Last Rites, and it's about a perverted undertaker whose specialty is snatching the bodies of people who aren't yet quite dead. And then, needless to say, he sinks his fangs into their necks. Real gruesome stuff. The relatives of one of his victims begin to suspect something when the undertaker won't return the body of the deceased, and then there are all sorts of horrible rituals and a lot of gnashing of teeth. One neat thing about most vampire movies is that the vampires play by the rules. You know, only go out at night, avoid mirrors and crosses, look out for garlic, all that stuff. But the vampires in The Last Rites are a lot simpler. They just go after everything in sight, and I say, more power to them, just as long as they don't try to do it in a sequel. Gene, my dog this week is another one of those strongest man in town movies. It's called Bare Knuckles, and it stars Zach Kane as a citizen bounty hunter, Citizen Kane. His idea of a good time is to find some thug in an alley and beat him into a pulp before turning him over to the police. Zach Kane is a tough-looking dude who has a slight resemblance to Charles Bronson, and Bare Knuckles has more than a slight resemblance to Charles Bronson's own fistfight movie, Hard Times. The resemblance is especially obvious during the fight scenes in Bare Knuckles, which are endless and repetitive and have substandard Hollywood zilch-grade production values. That means every time somebody gets hit in the jaw, it sounds like a sound effects man is attacking a naugahyde sofa with a ping-pong paddle. If anybody ever did really hit that hard, they wouldn't have bare knuckles, they'd have split knuckles.
Okay, well, my dog this week is a ridiculous thriller called It Came Without Warning. The It is an outer space alien that looks like that big creature that stepped off the mothership in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. The only difference is that This creature is real ugly, and it throws slimy green little frisbees with teeth in them into the human beings. Jack Palance catches a few in the chest and neck, and so do a bunch of other people. The only time this movie is fun is when that creature is on the screen, but unfortunately it doesn't pop up until the film's very last reel. So it came without warning all right, but unfortunately it showed up way too late. My dog this week is another crazed stabber movie called Schizoid, the story of a Los Angeles slasher who writes to a newspaper lovelorn columnist and threatens to go on a killing rampage, which he or she does, and it's our job to guess who the killer is. Frankly, I didn't feel much like guessing. The various and bloody knife attacks and scissor attacks in this movie has, as you might expect, primarily women as victims, and having one woman after another scream in terror is this film's tired old sick specialty. Although Schizoid has been well photographed and does star Klaus Kinski, a fine European actor, Schizoid is still at its core a cheap slasher movie that deserves to be labeled just what it is, a dog.
Okay, my dog this week is The Exterminator, a lame-brained ripoff of Death Wish, that 1973 Charles Bronson film where Bronson became a one-man vigilante force. The Exterminator stars Robert Ginty as a guy who goes berserk when a youth gang kills his best buddy. First, the Exterminator guns down the youth gang. Then he really gets vicious. He goes after one guy with an acetylene torch. Then he drops a mobster into a meat grinding machine and turns him into hamburger. As if this isn't bad enough, the movie also has to make detours into sleazy Times Square sex parlors that have nothing to do with the story. If the Exterminator really wanted to perform a service for mankind, what he ought to do is self-destruct.
You know, I think after week people hear us do these dogs, they wonder if we really go see them. We do go see these pictures.
Do we ever?
My dog this week is Dead and Buried, a hideously gruesome thriller in which a crazed mortician, Jack Albertson, can't stop with merely embalming people. He wants to make them live again in an East Coast seaport town named Potter's Bluff. The ads for this film say it'll take your breath away. No, I just think it'll make you look away, as we're forced to suffer through a scalp being peeled from a human head and a hypodermic needle stuck into the eyeball. Yuck. You can safely avoid seeing Dead and Buried.
I believe you. My dog this week is called Screamers, and it's like an anthology of ingredients from several different Hollywood garbage genres. Screamers is being advertised like a bloody horror film with a warning of, you'll actually see a man turned inside out. Well, be warned, you never do in this film. It's actually more of a bloody underwater adventure film about the lost continent of Atlantis. The movie stars Joseph Cotton as a mad scientist who's created a race of zombies who are half fish and half man. He's forced them to plunder the sunken continent of Atlantis and return all the gold to him. And in the movie's climax, the amphibians turn against the humans, while meanwhile, back at the lost continent, a volcano explodes and the hero is trapped inside a flooded chamber. It's absolutely remarkable how Screamers manages to take all that material and make it boring, but it does.
It was just awful. I saw it, and the worst scene in that picture is laughable. Barbara Bach feeds milk to all these men dressed up like lizards.
Right,
just stupid. Well, my dog this week is a rip-off skin flick called Fantasies. It's about 8 years old. The only reason it's being re-released now around the country is it stars a teenage actress named Kathleen Collins, who has since changed her name to Bo Derek. You may have heard of her. Fantasies is the story of a young woman experiencing growing pains as she is tossed and turned between two men, but who cares about that? The big question is, does Bo Derek take her clothes off?
Does she?
Yes, but she does it only twice, once for a bath and the other time for a brief lovemaking session. And the film is rated R, so it's all quite tame and in soft, fuzzy focus. It's just a miserable film, and you can safely avoid Fantasies.
Thanks for the tip, Gene. My dog this week is Hell Night, starring Linda Blair, who was possessed by the devil in The Exorcist and had her brain fried in The Heretic. Now she must undergo the most inhuman experience of all, a fraternity hell week. You got it. This is another one of those dead teenager movies. They're all just about the same. Every one of them starts out with several dozen teenagers and winds up with several dozen dead teenagers. In Hell Night, the cast spends the night creeping through a deserted mansion where a whole family was murdered long ago. They were all murdered except for the youngest son, a freak who is described as a gork. Well, my dictionary doesn't define gork, but apparently, judging by the film, gorks are creatures who live in a mad slasher movie and kill teenagers. Well, that means gorks can't be all bad. Look at it this way. Someone didn't kill those teenagers, those movies would never end. In fact, I think we owe this gork a vote of thanks.
My dog this week is a pitiful sex comedy called Squeeze Play. It's about a bunch of young women who organize their own baseball, softball team because their softball-crazy boyfriends are ignoring them. The whole movie leads up to a predictable boy versus girl softball game where the women try to show the men who's boss, and they're awful bad softball players. The technical quality of Squeeze Play is hideous. This film is barely better than a home movie, and as for any character development, forget it. Some women show their bottoms, others show their breasts. That's about all the character development we get. I was appalled, really, about how bad this film was.
Well, my dog this week is a submaronic exercise in idiocy named Spaced Out. It's supposed to be a spoof of science fiction thrillers, but it doesn't have enough wit to spoof anything. This movie makes Saturday morning cartoons look sophisticated. Spaced Out is about 4 Earth people who are picked up by 3 sex pots in a flying saucer. Also on board the flying saucer is an adolescent male computer voice who makes wise guy remarks about everything, and I'd be willing to bet that that computer voice was dubbed in afterwards in a desperate attempt to pretend that this movie knew all along how bad it was. In fact, whole sections of this movie don't even seem to visually match other sections. I wonder if it was all pieced together out of leftovers, kind of a Dog of the Week mix and match.
You know, I saw both of these films on the same double bill
Oh my God.
one night.
How did you manage to survive?
I crawled out.
Okay, Gene, my dog this week is an incredibly idiotic comedy named Dirty Tricks, and it's a dirty trick, all right, on the audience. The movie stars Elliot Gould and Rich Little as college professors, and Kate Jackson, formerly of TV's Charlie's Angels, jiggling her way into a movie debut as a TV reporter who falls in love with Gould. Meanwhile, there's a ridiculous plot about a stolen document proving that George Washington was a British spy. Gould is chased by mysterious men in a telephone truck, by mysterious men in a black limousine, and by a pair of mysterious twins who are kung fu masters. They're all trying to prevent the scandal of the earth-shaking revelation that George Washington could tell a lie. Well, so what? You seen one cherry tree, you seen them all.
Okay, my dog of the week is a dismal comic melodrama called Earthbound, the latest syrupy trash from that film company in Salt Lake City that used to be called Sun Classic Pictures. Now they call themselves Taft International Pictures. No change, though, in the quality of their films. Earthbound tells the story of visitors from another planet who crash land in California, where they are sheltered by kindly Burl Ives and his sweet little grandson. And then they're pursued by a crackpot team of law enforcement creeps. There isn't a natural moment in this movie. It's all so mechanical. Shots of kindly grandpa, comedy bits, heartfelt confessions, more grandpa, more comedy bits, more confessions. It feels like this movie was made by a machine, not human beings.
Another production of Planet X.
Right. These films are even worse than The Warriors. Roger, My Dog is Secrets, a confusing, supposedly meaningful English love story that is being billed in some cities as a new film starring Jacqueline Bisset, the beautiful star of The Deep and The Greek Tycoon. Well, Secrets isn't a new film. It was made several years ago. And the only reason it's being brought back to theaters now is that Bisset has a sex scene in the movie where you can see her naked body. The scene lasts about 3 or 4 minutes. She made it before she became a star, and now some Sharpie distributors are trying to capitalize on her bare chest. The film otherwise is thoroughly confusing as it examines secret love relationships entered into by Bisset, by her husband, and by her young daughter. But the real secret in Secrets is that the film is a completely phony ripoff. It's not new.
It's not new. My film is newer, I guess, than Secrets, but it should have been made before the invention of the motion picture. The dog is called The Stranger and the Gunfighter, and it's sort of a United Nations of schlock. It stars a Chinese kung fu expert, an American cowboy, and a spaghetti western. It was produced by Italians and shot in Spain and Hong Kong. And how do these people talk to each other? Well, that'd only be a problem if they had anything to say. The kung fu expert has been sent to America to find out what his dead uncle did with a fortune in gold. Well, it turns out that the secret of the gold has been tattooed on the bottoms of 4 of the uncle's girlfriends. And so the Chinese guy and the gunfighter team up to find the girls and get to the bottom of things.
Oh, no.
Then there are lots of phony kung fu fights and boring gun battles. And you know, this film has a little something to disappoint almost everyone.